Kusile, it's a minute after 6. A very good morning and welcome to the program. This is the Thursday edition of Kusile Breakfast Show. Thank you for tuning in. Temperatures are very low today, in particular La Mbabane. The highest temperature it is 16 degrees Celsius. You're warm wherever you are. My name is Lungelele Makakwela. I'm with Shumnak Billy Mgoni.
Gloomy, just like the weather, Lulu.
Yeah.
It's funny, you mentioned that the temperature is 16 degrees Celsius being the projected highest temperature today, but what has really increased from yesterday, because pretty much it's similar as yesterday, the difference is the focus on precipitation.
Yeah.
We are told that the rain is on 80% chances today, which means it could be raining cats and dogs in intervals when you really study what they are telling us. So we are hoping that whenever you drive out this morning, you have your umbrella with yourself. And if you are driving a car that doesn't have really good tires, make sure that you drive really slow on the roads. But also we do expect a bit of tinghungu, so let's be patient with each other on the roads. Outside of that, it is indeed a very good morning. We are happy to wake up with you once again this Thursday as we wrap up this very important week. So thank you so much for waking up with us. Let's get straight into the program, Lulu.
Welcome to the program once again. The Ministry of Health, through a statement this week, said the country has recorded new malaria deaths, 4 in particular, and 296 cases from July last year to date, with the Hoho region being the hardest hit with 124 cases. The country is listed as one of the 173 countries eliminating malaria in the E2020 report. Could this be a setback for the country? National Malaria Control Program Manager Zuliti Mkulu will join us today in studio to give us a comprehensive analysis of the situation and also fill us in on interventions done by government, as this is a public health threat. Do stay tuned.
The global economy, it is slowing down again. It's a very concerning development that everyone is talking about. But the IMF has, slashed its 2025 growth forecast, and they have warned of a new era of trade wars and economic fragmentation. Indeed, if you are really following keenly what is happening around the world, a trade war isn't something that is going to shock you. But a new era in terms of projection by the IMF should really concern the whole globe and the Kingdom of Eswatini as it trades with a lot of other countries. But we do want to understand what happens, because everything is announced in Washington, but it has impact all the way here in Mbabane. That impact is really, really real. So here at home, a bold local move is making headlines. King Mswati III unveiling a massive 5.2 billion strategic oil reserve model. Now, another person could say we've always known about this particular development, but it is always exciting when we see steps forward, such capital projects, very, very important projects that could indeed shield Eswatini from future energy shocks, as well as reposition us on the regional economic map. So what does it all mean for Eswatini's resilience? What does it mean for our trade strategy, as well as our fiscal future, which is very important? Economist Analyst Bia is in studio today at 6:30 a.m. He's going to unpack the ripple effects, as well as spotlight what small nations must do when global giants start to stumble. Indeed, if time will allow us, we will also look into, some of the pronouncements that we see on the new Forbes Africa issue, which has profiled the Kingdom of Eswatini. A lot of those ministry profiles and the excerpts that have been pronounced by our portfolio ministers there really tie into this whole IMF conversation in terms of, shielding us and cushioning us right now, as well as for future shocks. So we'll get into that conversation as well. Good morning once again. It's 5 minutes after 6. You are still with us, but we have to look at the headlines on our major newspapers.
Starting with the Times of Eswatini, leading headlines today, the king has unveiled a 5.2 billion strategic oil reserve model. He has lauded the project, which marks new milestone in Eswatini-Taiwan economic collaboration. Project is expected to create jobs, boost welding, electrical and construction skills. And in other news, 2 schools, over 340 affected by storm. Tattooed man denied Gubutsega, and the plastics ban has been suspended for 7 years.
Let's look at that is the front page that Lulu just gave you headlines of. So now we look at the back page with our sports headlines. This morning, the big story: following failed bid to attach property, PLE hits back at Wanderers. The elite football office pays disputed over 38,000 Malangeni under protest. Meanwhile, Wanderers have another application in court. Another story speaks to CAF's funding boost for stadium construction. This one, the Confederations of African Football has introduced a game-changing initiative in the ongoing saga of FIFA standard stadium construction in the Kingdom of Eswatini. And then Sundowns Bucks eye upsets. The last story: increased incentives for Eswatini envoys. This one still speaks to the Confederation of African Football, CAF, which has revealed plans to raise participation fees for its inter-club tournaments.
All right, so moving on to the Eswatini Observer, leading story: King meets Taiwan special envoy. New investor law on the cards. King assures due process in oil reserve projects and also invites Taiwan investors. Cabinet pushes for residency through investments. In other news, MPs approve VAT hike, and patients returned back yesterday at the government hospital as the hospital staff were involved in a sit-in.
We look at the Eswatini Observer Sports, the top story. It's D-Day for Wanderers and the EFA as crunch talks begin today. Wanderers EFA finally meet at Sikwata today, and the talks follow court rulings in favor of the Hub Giants. Another story speaks to Toby and Melusi, who jet out to Iraq for Al Basra half marathon. And then Madlenya face the Barrow and the fight for MTN Premier League survival, which is heating up as the season nears its conclusion. Another one, fate of 16-club league to be decided next month.
And lastly, the Eswatini Daily News. His Majesty unveils model for multi-billion strategic fuel reserve. Eswatini heralding to new era in energy security. And also Taiwan has injected 9.3 million Malangeni more to empower Eswatini women. Funding has been increased to 28 million Malangeni. Letting Tamba Mbili Shiselweni is ready to welcome Eswatini to celebrate King's birthday.
All right, Eswatini Daily News Sport. Very, very few headlines here. EFA Wanderers big meeting today. Golden Boot race Masoko aims for gold, and Pep Guardiola joy as Man City go third. That's it.
And that's it for our newspaper headlines this morning. It's 9 minutes after 6. We go for an ad break. We come back with Dean Zaba.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.sz. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Welcome back Nati Tinzaba. Ingonyama seyikhuthate abafundisi ukuthi balandzele isibonelo sabafunzi baJesu Kristu labangatangi bakuyekele kushumayela livangeli noma sebabhekene netimo letilukhuni. Ingonyama iphefumula esigodlweni engabezweni ngalesibili ngesikhathi abafundisi lebangenele tinkonzo temkhosi wephasika bavalelisa kuSosilo. Lenkonzo ekuvalelisa kwabafundisi iphawule kwephetha kwemkhosi wephasika.
Belusi bemabandla bashaya itandla embubeni yemhlaba ngemva kokungenela tinkonzo temkhosi wephasika. Kwekuthi njalo ngaletinkonzo ngemgcibelo bafundisi bangene esangweni bothelilanga bahlephulelane umbhalo. Kuba nesihloko labatphakamisako bese sebayawuvula bayawuphenyisisa bawuhlatiye kude baphume netimphendvulo taleto tihloko. Lilanga langa lesibili kuba lilanga lekucela indlela esilweni bamunye nenhlakanipho yekhola emabandla. Kule nkonzo yekuvalelisa kubelusi lekiyo ingonyama beyisingethwe bomake emakhosikazi bantu abenkosi nandvunankhulu. Ingonyama iphe bafundisi ingqamu yemavi ekubakhutsata ukuthi balandzele isibonelo sebafundzi baJesu labashumayela livangeli nasetikhatsini letilukhuni.
Sikanye kanye singumfelandawonye siyakwati kulishumayela live lenkosi kuze kube ngunaphakade nembala lasho lithi baphuma bashone emhlabeni wonke jikelele lokhu silapha nje Eswatini sihleli ngelive lenkosi siyalalela kungenxa yabo labo bafundisi labaphuma batinikela kulikhuni liyasho ke nelive ukuthi ngamunye indlela lebe babulawa ngayo kepha kuphathaleke ukuthi noma sebavile ukuthi lomnye wabo ubulewe kalikhuni bathi lesifungo lesisithethe ukuthi sawuba umfelandawonye angeke sikhweshekiso bafundisi.
Ngelisonto ingonyama ibusise emahhovisi lamasha enhlangano iLeague of Churches esontweni lesive eNkhanini. Bekhutelwandle bafundisi ngesikhathi ingonyama ithi titawufakwa tonke timfanelo letishodako kude lesakhiwo sisebenze ngalokuphelele.
Kwathi lamanye emahhovisi abonakala ukuthi ayashoda nalantenye tindlu tisashoda lokwa lengithi-ke namuhla abafundisi konke lokho lokushodako sekutawulungiswa kufakwe nemakhompyutha ekhathi bafundisi.
Ndvunankhulu umhlonitsha Russell Miso Dlamini uthi kuyohlele kumthokotisa lomdzala wemalanga kubona emakhosi ahola sive kumkhonteni.
Kusukela ngalesihlanu kuze kube ngilesikhathi solo inkosi nendlovukazi hleti nesive uhlanganyelwe kubongwa uNkulunkulu. Engakusho nje kafishane ukuthi akusiko okuncane lokhu phambi kwaNkulunkulu kukhulu.
Umbhekelo webukhosi umvane Nkosi Similane na uthi ngaba khona yonke imisebenzi lemihle kodwa lokubalulekile kubhalwa kwemabito encwadzini yekuphila.
Kwendeke nje uba ushilo sibavulile emehlo bayabona labangakhulumi bakhuluma labangeva sibashiye bayeva tishosha sitisukumisile uthi Jesu ngiyanifu ningathokotiswa ngilokho kepha thokotiswani kusemagameni alotshiwa abhaliwe encwadzini yekuphila.
Ingonyama ibusise bobishop lababili labavuse baholi bemabandla labalele. Umbishop Sambulo Similane welibandla lemajuba wavuse umbishop Johannes Similane kwathi libandla leNew Pentecostal Apostolic Church of Christ lavusa Wilson Msibi ngembishop David Msibi. Basabuyela emabandleni labawelusile bafundisi imigodla yabo igcwele emavi etinshumayelo letethulwe ngemakhosi kuletinkonzo. Ingonyama imemetela umnyaka wa 2025 kuthi ngumnyaka lotawuletsa tinguquko letinhle kuphakame inhlala kahle yesive kwathi indlovu yemhlaba yekhutha sive ngebudlova nekubulalana lesekwanza eveni yabuye yakhutsata emaswati ukuthi awathathele etulo emathuba ekuhlangana ndzawonye akhonte uNkulunkulu ngekukhululeka. Etindzabeni ngisandile Makhanya nazwela masuku esigodlweni engabezweni.
Indvuna yetangephandle eveni le-Taiwan Dr. Lin Chia-lung seyetfulele indlovukazi Mhlekazi imali lengetulu kwetigidzi letiyimfica letawukhulisa sikhwama lesibambisa bomake bakuleli ngenhlanyelo yekucala emabhizinisi. Lokhu kwenteke ngesikhatsi yona indvuna lesithunywa samengameli wase-Taiwan lesikhetsekile ivusela indlovu yemhlaba esigodlweni eLutzitsini. Indlovukazi Mhlekazi yemukele indvuna nelibandla layo isingethwe liphini landvunankulu umhlonishwa Kusile Dladla nendvuna etiko latangephandle umhlonishwa Pholile Shakhantu.
Okay, over here, please. Thank you.
Kutsi tengethuba tensimbi yesibili emini yantsambama sithunywa samengameli welive le-Taiwan lesikhetsekile Dr. Lin Chia-lung savusela indlovukazi Mhlekazi esigodlweni eLutzitsini. Dr. Lin loyindvuna yetangephandle khona eTaiwan ufike kuleli ngalwesibili yahola libandla lelifaka ekhatsi bosomabhizinisi base-Taiwan labatawusebentisa luvakasho lwakhe kubuka emathuba ekuhlanyela emnothweni wakuleli. Mengameli wase-Taiwan Lai Ching-te unelwanti lolubanti ngekutikhandla kwendlovu yemhlaba nangetinhlelo tayo tekutfutfukisa inhlalakahle yabomake bakuleli nekubakutsata kutsi bangasaleli ngaphandle kutebhizinisi. Kwesekela indlovu yemhlaba Mengameli uphathise yona indvuna kutsi yetfulele yona indlovu yemhlaba imali lengu-9.2 million emalangeni lekhulisa sikhwama lesasungulwa live le-Taiwan ngenhloso yekubambisa bomake bakuleli ngenhlanyelo yokucala emabhizinisi lesatiwa ngele-Women Business Start-up Microfinance Revolving Fund. Indvuna itawungenela umkhosi we-King's Birthday lotawubanjelwa inhlangano ngalesihlanu kanti bekubhekeke kutsi uma isuka esigodlweni eLutzitsini ivusele ingonyama esigodlweni kaLozitha lapho bekubhekeke khona kutsi yona ingonyama yemhlaba ibusisa umsebenzi lomkhulukati welive wekakhiwa kwetingungu tekugcina oyili. Libika kwethu indzabeni ngisandile Makhanya naThemba Mamba nazweli Masuku esigodlweni eLutzitsini.
Emalungiselelo emcimbi wekugubha lusuku lwekutalwa kwengwenyama sekasemaphethelweni umhlonishwa wandvunankulu Russell Dlamini bekase King Sobhuza II Stadium. Inhlangano yawubuka kutsi lamalungiselelo ahamba kanjani. Ndvunankulu uthi konke sekume ngemumo.
Lusuku lwekuhlangana kwesive eKing Sobhuza II Stadium sigubhe lusuku lwekutalwa kwengwenyama seluvele lusemnyango. Ngalesitsatfu bekwentiwa emalungiselelo ekugcina lapho bekubukwa khona kutsi sekume ngemumo yini konke. Umhlonishwa ndvunankulu Russell Miso Dlamini uthi uyatfokota ngalokubonile kusendiwa lamalungiselelo.
Vela sezingeni lesetulu mukhulu lo msebenzi lesewendiwe la siyakhona lokho ukuthi lokuncane lekuselekta bekuphelile ngalolu suku lolukhulu lwenkosi ngaba nje ukugcizelela ukuthi cha konke kuhamba kahle sive asiphelele ngetinkani sitewuhalalisela inkosi ngesuku lwayo le-birthday kuyabanza ke inhlangano abete bantu malungiselele ukuthi batawufuthuma lokho ukuthi nje ke njalo umsebenzi wenkosi usuka ku-region lena uya kulenye usuke ku-region leyo kwentelwa kona ukuthi usonzelela kubantu bonke abantu bakhona uya emcimbini baphindze babuyele emakhaya basuke emakhaya labahlala khona lokho njengoba kukhulu nokuthi ke laba nje labatabe bagidza badlala bento emidlalo bonke baqhamuka la sifundzeni saseshiselweni uhulumende ke uyababambisa bonke labo laba ingcenye yalo msebenzi.
Ndvunankulu uchubekele nasesigodlweni Mbangweni lapho kubhekeke ukuthi lo msebenzi wangalesihlanu uphethele khona. Nakhona ufike wakhanza emalungiselelo sekaya ngasemaphethelweni. Kula malungiselelo kuvelile ukuthi tinhlangothi letahlukene letifaka ekhatsi labatawunanzisa emasotsha latawufola tekuphepha kanye nebeticimamlilo setivele time ngemumo. Indzaba seyisele ngemaswati kutsi aphelele ngetinkani. Lobikako ngithemkosi Mavimbela enhlangano.
Imvuna yelitiko letemabhizinisi nekuthengiselana umhlonishwa Manxoba Khumalo ithi leli tiko ngekubanjiswa live le-Taiwan liyachubeka nekuthuthukisa tebhizinisi netekuthengiselana nekuthi eMaswati akhone ukutfola ematfuba emsebenti langcono. Imvuna beyikhuluma ngesikhathi kuchubeka umhlangano waleli tiko nabosomabhizinisi belive le-Taiwan.
Litiko letemabhizinisi nekuthengiselana libambe umhlangano nelibandla labosomabhizinisi nebahlanyeli imali belive le-Taiwan netinhlangothi letahlukene temnotfo welive kubukisana ukuthi lamave lamabili angabambisana kanjani ekuthuthukiseni tekuthengiselana. Indvuna yetiko letemabhizinisi umhlonishwa Manxoba Khumalo uthi uhulumende uphokophele ekuthuthukiseni umnotfo welive kuthuthuke nalezinga lemsebenti loniketwa eMaswati.
His Majesty's government is very keen to assist in securing strategic partnerships and also ensure that we are forward integrating as opposed to exporting raw materials and doing primary manufacturing. We want to venture into tertiary manufacturing and real value addition because we also want to improve the quality of the jobs that we create. These are therefore strategic opportunities to collaborate with local companies.
Sihlalo webhodi yabacwenzisi benkampani yahulumende lekhanga abahlanyeli imali Tiyohlophe uthi umsebenzi wabo kuchumanisa eMaswati netinkampani tangaphandle kwelive ikakhulukazi timakethe takhona even le-Taiwan.
Our goal is simple: to showcase Eswatini's business potential and provide a clear, practical pathway for doing business in our country. IPA serves as your gateway to investing in Eswatini. We provide end-to-end support from initial inquiries, approvals, and setup, all the way to aftercare.
Sihlalo wenkampani lebukete kuchumana even le-Taiwan lokukhulumelela bosomabhizinisi base-Taiwan uthi balungele kwesekela imisebenzi yentuthuko yakuleli.
We are here to listen and to understand what Eswatini needs, what your business and community seek, and how we can collaborate in a way that they are mutually beneficial, inclusive, and sustainable.
Kutekuthengiselana ke live laseSwatini lithengisela live le-Taiwan umkhicito lobita ngetulu kwa-6 million emalangeni njalo ngeminyaka lofaka ekhatsi titselo tibhidvo nelujugu lokunye. Lobikako nguSamkelsiwe Khoza naThemba Shabangu eMbabane.
Imvuna yetasekhaya umhlonishwa uMfanenkosi Lindiwe ithi litiko selikulungisile ngokuhamba lokutawuthatha sive etindzaweni letahlukene eshiselweni siye lapho kutawube kubanjwe khona umcimbi wokugubha lusuku lekutalwa kwengwenyama. Imvuna yekukhulume lokhu ngalesithathu emini nayikhulumisana nebetindzaba esigodlweni eMbangweni.
Nina bakangwane vele silungisile kwekuhamba kakhulu lapha eshiselweni nje. Ishiselo vele sitawukhokha emabhansi latabathatha timotolo letabathatha tibalethe ngoba ishiselo ngiyona ihamba embili. Ishiselo ngiyona vele ingwenyama ikhethe ukuthi namhla iyawugidza neshiselo losuku loluhle kangaka. Tabe tiphumuleke timoto telitiko lapho khona sive sita khona eshiselweni. Leti godzini letiye nje awutaba kuncane lokutawuphuma khona. Timoto tawugcwala la shiselweni kakhulu. Kepha kasisho ukuthi eMaswati akasukuta eMaswati emagumbo manomhlaba vele emabombo abheke eshiselweni. Lapho khona siyawujabula khona sitshengise bunye bethu sitigcabe ngebukhosi bethu nangebuve bethu. Nina bekunene njengoba vele nangu lesihlanu sosemnyango siyambuka sonke solo simbukela khashane nangu sosemnyango. Sive sonke vela siphume ngetinkane niyamenywa nonke kulomkhosi lomkhulu kangaka wekugubha lusuku lwenkosi. Kotani Maswati ndokwakha kwenu ndogidza kwenu emagumbo manomhlaba lubombo shiselo manzini lonke liswati limenyiwe kulomgidvo lomkhulu wengonyama ukuthi sitogidza bonke sikuphuma wonke lomncane nalomdzala lomkhulu nalonjani lonke liswati.
Imvuna yelitiko letemcebo waphansi nemandla imphunga umfana Kusile nkwakhela icela ukuthi bahlanyele imali belive leTaiwan babambise uhulumende endzabeni yekuthuthukisa tetimayini nekuchuba luhlelo lokuniketa sive emanti lahlobile. Imvuna bekhuluma emhlanganweni wabosomabhizinisi bakuleli nebelive leTaiwan.
Emhlanganweni welitiko letemabhizinisi nekuthengiselana ngalesithathu netinhlangothi letahlukene kuhulumende wakuleli nabosomabhizinisi belive leTaiwan nebahlanyeli imali bakulela live, indvuna yetiko letemcebo waphansi nemandla imphunga umfana Kusile nkwakhela icele ukuthi bahlanyele imali belive leTaiwan balibambise live tinhlangothi letahlukene temanti netemcebo waphansi.
We are very keen to receive investment from Taiwan in the field of mining, water, which we were part of it, which is part of us. In water, I'm told, we are looking for meters, prepaid meters. Prepaid meters are important for us because our people are looking at connecting on prepaid. Parliament has called on us to work on that, and we're still looking for partners to connect the whole country. In mining, we have coal, we have gold, we have diamond, we have all precious minerals. We have the earth minerals that are rare in the world, and we have just done geomapping. We are looking at working with Taiwan investors in the field of constructing and operating the strategic oil in the country.
Indvuna ithi kunemisebenzi ihulumende labo ukuyithuthukisa ikakhulukati kumbiwa kwetemcebo waphansi kuthuthukisa tetimayini telive kutemaswati atfole ematfuba emsebenzi labonakalako kanti tetimayini kwanyalo lapha event safaka lokubili ekhulwini emnothweni welive lobikako ngisamkelisiwe Khoza naThemba Shabangu eMbabane.
Baphathi betifundza kuleli bahalalisela silo semhlaba ngekuhlanganisa iminyaka lengo-57 solo satalwa. Bakhuluma nabaxoxisana netinsatheli talomsakato. Baphathi betifundza bathi buholi bengwenyama sebubone intuthuko yelive etinhlangothini letinyenti lokufaka ekhatsi temfundvo, temphilo netenhlalakahle kubala kulokunye.
Njengoba sekusele lilanga linye ukuthi libalele esifundzeni saseshiselweni, baphathi tifundza bahalalisela silo semhlaba kulomkhosi nebuholi lobucotho lesebuthuthukise impilo yemaswati. Umphathi wesifundza saseshiselweni Themba Nhlanganiso Masuku uthi kuyintfokoto lenkhulu kibo njengesifundza ukuthi lusuku lokutalwa kwesilo lukujelwe enkhundleni yenkhosi Sobhuza wesibili.
Sifisela inkosi lusuku nje loluhle kakhulu nempumelelo ngoba lokuthi nje sibe honored nathi inkosi itela kithi eshiselweni to celebrate 57 years sicabanga ukuthi kusenta nje sibe very humbled nathi.
Umphathi sifundza sakaHhohho umfana Nkosi Thanzile uncome esilo ngekuhambisa imbili inhlalakahle yalabeswele.
Siyayihalalisela ingonyama emhlaba sithi linolelo ludze ekunene. Siyabonga kuba nenkosi lenjengaye inkosi lesikhathalelayo sive sayo.
Umphathi wesifundza saselibonjeni Themba Msibi udumise iligalelo lengonyama ekuhlanganiseni emaswati lokugcina kuthula eveni.
Siyabongela kakhulu ekumeni sengathi uNkulunkulu lesezulwini ngamupha iminyaka mengetela nje khula mlisa khula nzambezele litsho.
Umphathi wesifundza sakaManzini isikhulu umfana Nkosi Gija ubonge isilo semhlaba ngekuhola live sithathisa kulomdzala wetinsuku.
Simaswati nje sidokuvumisa sidoyithandazela inkosi ukuthi uNkulunkulu akayiphe amandla mo akayiphe impilo mo ngoba nakanika inkosi ayithola amandla uNkulunkulu kuphila thina sive kahle siphila kahle thina silithuthuke live libe nekuthula sidumisele konke isigodlo sethu sonke ukuthi thina sinesigodlo sinemhlekazi sinenkosi sinesigodlo sonke sinabantu benkosi siphelele nje silive kude lokushodako bayethu naphakathi.
Silo semhlaba sitabe sihlanganisa iminyaka ling-57 emkhosini obanjelwa eshiselweni ngaleSihlanu mhla ka-25 kumabasa kulesetulu. Kubika nothele sithole nakiyani Msibi kamanzini.
Kutemidlalo mengameli wenhlangano leyengamele ibhola kuleli vekati Dr. Patrice Motsepe uthi lonke live lakuleli vekati lokufaka ekhathi live laseSwatini kubheke ukuthi lakhelwe inkundla yetemidlalo lesezingeni lelicalwe ngiyo iCAF kanye neFIFA. Dr. Motsepe uthi sekunemali lelinganiselwa ku$1 billion letawusebenta kule minyaka lesiphohlongo letako ukuthi lonke live kuleli vekati libe linenkundla lefanele.
And, I spent many years in Swaziland and had a huge privilege of being educated there, met some of the most wonderful people. Thank you so much. Let me put it more positive. Every single one of the countries that are represented by our member association presidents, we need you to play football in your country.
Akhuluma emhlanganweni wokusayina kwesivumelwano emkhatsini kweCAF kanye neAfrica Global Logistics, umengameli weCAF Dr. Patrice Motsepe uthi onke amave kubheke ukuthi adlalise imidlalo yayo yeCAF kanye neFIFA etinkundleni tabo. Dr. Motsepe uthi kule mali lengu$1 billion letawusebenziswa eminyakeni lesiphohlongo kude kuthi live libambe imidlalo yayo yeCAF kanye neFIFA ingabanjwa ngaphandle. Ngoba ukuthi balandzeli bebhola babukele emacembu abo kanye nemakhethelo esive etinkundleni tabo hayi ngaphandle.
In every country there must be a stadium and that is at the CAF and FIFA standards.
Sihlalo welcommittee lelibuke indzaba ye-16 teams enhlanganweni ye-Premier League of Eswatini. Welile Mabuza uthi ngekuhlangana njalo kwaleli committee sekubheke ukuthi bethule umbiko mayelana nalendzaba mhla ka-15 kulenyanga letako ukuthi simo siyavuma ukuthi live lingadlalisa emacembu langu-16 endzabeni ye-Premier League eminyakeni lotako noma cha. Kanti letinye tingijimi letimbili takuleli lekungumelusi Khumalo kanye naThobile Ngwenyama basuke kuleli balibhekisa eveni le-Iraq kuyongenela umqhudelwano we-half marathon losukunyiswe yinhlangano lebuke kudlalisa ematubane e-Iraq. Letingijimi titawubuya kuleli ngelisondvo lesiyakulo. Satiphetsa ngaleto temidlalo sibahlele temakethe siyabuya masinyana.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.za.
Kude lesinye isikhathi ngaphandle kwalesi.
Aba research bafunze.
Being risky means ukuthi nalokuwa kwayo kulula.
Nathi kufuna sente ukukhiqiza lokuthembile.
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart and a desire for the unexpected. You embark on journeys to discover new worlds full of wonder. You choose a path to awaken your senses, a world to make you look up and realize just how inspiring this life can be. Arrive and awaken your heart. Explore life in ways only thought possible in your dreams. Discover just how far you'll go to expand your understanding of life's greatest mysteries. There's just one place on this planet with so much to offer. Now is the time for you to have the royal experience.
Welcome back. 36 minutes after 6. We are going to get into our very first interview segment of our show today. Thank you so much for staying with us. We want to look at the economic developments that are happening globally, obviously affecting the kingdom of Eswatini. We are seeing that, the global climate right now is clouded by a lot of instability. So the world's financial leadership has issued a warning that we cannot ignore. They are saying that we've entered a new era that is uncertain, and it's going to affect global trade. Now, the IMF has cut its 2025 global growth focus from 3.3% to 2.8%, which is a downgrade that is driven by rising tariffs, intensifying geopolitical tension, as well as a retreat into protectionism by some of the world's biggest economies. Now, even the US, which is the supposed safe haven, has had its own growth expectations slashed from 2.7% to 1.8%. For smaller economies like Eswatini, which of course depend on predictable trade routes, foreign investment and development finance, these global contractions hit close to home. Sanela Sbia is in studio. He's going to help us make sense of, all these big numbers, or relatively small numbers, which have a big impact to the economic landscape of the globe. Sanela, good morning to you. Welcome to the program. Maybe let's set the scene first and look at the downgrade and its triggers. 3.3 to 2.8, it sounds marginal to some people, but for policymakers and investors, not so much. It is a flashing red light. What is driving this retreat?
Thank you, Mr. Nxumalo, and a very good morning. So like you're saying, this is huge because we're talking of the global economy here. Mm-hmm. So contractions in the global economy mean basically that we're going to see overall demand across the globe shrinking. So that would require that businesses and would also see a decline in terms of production because, when people sell, somebody must buy. And if people don't have money to buy, then there's no point in producing. So at the very core of this downgrade is actually the unpredictable international trade order, which has actually been caused by the US's tariff policy, right? And also as well, even within that WTO, that IMF World Bank Spring Summit happening right now in Washington, D.C., we saw the Treasury Secretary saying that the U.S. wants to balance trade. So in as much as we can see a bit of a let's say a favorable tone coming out of the White House in terms of being able to make deals and negotiations.
By favorable tone, are you speaking to, Trump's assertion on we are going to be nice to China, to Xi?
Yes, we're going to be nice to China, to Xi. We want to make a deal with India. We want to make a deal with London. We want to make a deal with the European Union, right? So he wants to make deals. That means they're doubling down in terms of, or they're backing down in terms of what they wanted to do initially, because they can see that it has actually done more harm.
They're learning a lesson.
Than good. Yeah, so they're learning a lesson.
Yeah.
So that's where the contraction is going to come from largely within the global economy. It's basically that trade order, and we've seen China retaliating. The EU had their own list of retaliatory tariffs and services which they never put to the fore. Countries like Canada as well have retaliated. Mexico has retaliated. So it's an entire war happening across the globe. The only difference is we are not shooting each other, but everyone's at war.
I want to talk about the spillovers as we look at this whole thing segment by segment. And I want us to start by the advanced economies in retreat. So in the U.S., potential spillovers there, 2.7 to 1.8%, the supposed safe haven. Really interesting what has happened. So for an economy that anchors global capital as we know it, what are the spillovers here, particularly for countries like ours that rely on those inflows?
Yeah. So it's two-way, Mr. Ngumalo. The first one is, Eswatini always needs AGOA, and Eswatini always relies on AGOA. If you look at the volume of trade that is happening between Eswatini and the US, you can tell that it's quite a significant amount of trade. We're looking at those flows in knitwear, those imports of machinery coming from the US into Eswatini. So that shows that in terms of our requirements for gross capital formation, we do need the US. But where it's going to hit us the most is in that export market, that AGOA market, that sugar market. At least for now, we've had coming out of the Sugar Association that we are not going to feel the impacts right now, purely because the production has already happened, and what we are selling is not new production that is going to be hit by the tariff. So we did it at a very favorable time period, right? So that's what we're going to feel happening. The direct impact of this trade war is whatever we're sending into the US will now attract this universal 10% tariff. So regardless of where you are in the club, right now there is a 90-day pause on the retaliatory or reciprocal tariffs, but the universal 10% has remained.
It remains. Yeah. It remains. Let's look at the Eurozone. What is happening there is interesting. So there, you look at the difference, it's a 0.9% dip, but how much of it is driven by the lingering energy shocks that are happening in Ukraine, as well as the tight monetary policy, but there's also the fragile consumer demand? Which one is it?
So mostly here is, one would say it's the fragile consumer demand. And now you compound that with limited access into the US market. So what that does is it shrinks overall demand, both domestic and foreign demand for European countries. Now that one shrinks a bit by more than what it would have shrunk if the US did not change any of those policies. But what we have seen there coming out of the European Union was, Christine Lagarde, the chair of the European Central Bank, she actually came out and, she is preemptively lowering interest rates right now, trying to make sure that they prop up demand within the Eurozone and ensuring that, the euro becomes relatively stable against the dollar as the dollar tanks. So that's where we're seeing Europe, trying to position themselves for a situation where they would be able to survive even without this. And we're looking at the integration within Europe. Europe trying to ensure that they trade mostly amongst themselves.
Yeah.
They are now in charge of their own defense. We're seeing all of those pushing, defense spending upwards to those regions of 5% of GDP. So now that type of military spending and defense spending will somehow cushion the European Union.
I want to open the World Economic Outlook here for the month and look at China and the emerging bloc. What we are seeing there's China, there's India, there's Russia. China moves from 4.2 to 3.2, which is a 1% dip there. India from 6.5 to 6.2, that's a 0.3 dip. And then Russia 1.4 to 1.5, a 0.1% dip. It's interesting, but maybe pivoting to China and really focusing there. China was sort of expected to power emerging market out of the COVID shadow. But what we are seeing here is underperformance, which then becomes interesting. So my question to you, what is going on with China's rebound, and how does it affect African economies hoping to ride that wave of recovery?
Yeah. So China, as we know, is actually in the direct line of fire from President Trump and his tariffs, right? So what China was hoping for, basically, when they announced their aspirations for the year, was a 5% target, and which they met and they could hit last year. But right now, with this entire tariff story, we do know that China trades quite a bulk of their commodities with the US. So this tariff is actually expected to slow down that demand coming through from the US. And if some of the firms, like we've had your airports and quite a number of companies saying they're looking at reallocating some of their production into the US. So now China is going to also lose on that capital, right? So that's why we're seeing this move such as sort of happening. In terms of in terms of China pulling the global south from this and leading the recovery from COVID, what we were expecting there was, if you look across Africa, for example, China has actually overtaken the US in terms of being the #1 trade partner for quite a number of African countries. So we do need demand to stay high in China so that our commodities, whatever it is that we're exporting, mostly which is raw materials into China, which then China takes and puts into more production. So we need that demand to be there for us to be able to sell our commodities to China. So we do need China to do well. So this shrink in the Chinese economy, it does also mean it's going to trickle into our Africa region and we're going to start seeing a shrink in terms of demand and ultimately output.
Sub-Sahara, as we come closer to home, there's South Africa, there's Nigeria. South Africa moves from 1.5 to 1%, which is a difference of 0.5. And then there's Nigeria that moves from 3.2 to 3%, which is a difference of 0.2%. Now, what we are seeing here is that they sit at 4.7% relatively. On paper, it sounds strong. It really does. But is it overstating the outlook? Or, of course, because given the tighter global financing environment that we are currently seeing, debt servicing risks and the shrinking donor flows, what is at play here?
So overall, when you look at emerging markets and looking at sub-Saharan Africa, we're seeing this overall increase. If you look at the growth rates that African countries have posited, Eswatini actually posited an 8-point-something growth in I think 2021, 2022, and we've averaged around 4% in 2024. If you look at Tanzania, they've averaged around 7% for the past, say, 5 years. You look at Mozambique, they're also doing very well. So emerging markets are taking shape and accessing, markets like your Chinese markets. And right now we have the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, which is something that African countries are also tapping into. So we've seen this accelerated growth from a lot of African countries over the years. So it's not being overstated. But what we particularly look into when you talk sub-Saharan Africa is the two major hubs. How are they doing? How is Nigeria doing? And how is South Africa doing? Because if we look at most of the intra-regional trade, it is controlled by the demand situation within South Africa. Most countries, whenever they produce something, they want to go into the South African market. If you look at our major trading partner, for example, is Eswatini, South Africa. You go throughout the SACU region, the major trading partner is South Africa. You go to the ECOWAS region, that is the Nigeria, the economic union for those West African states. Again, you will see that the major trading partner for all of those countries within that bloc is Nigeria. Everyone wants to access that Nigerian market, at least on a regional basis, where we have, issues of infrastructure coming into play. It's relatively easy for us to send our commodities into South Africa, since we are an exporter of goods rather than services.
Yes. Yeah. Let me come back, but now that we've given some sort of a preface of what is going on globally with every economy that is affected, obviously, with the downstream effects to the kingdom of Eswatini. We are seeing that in Eswatini, there's the global picture that deems, but Eswatini is stepping forward with clarity and some conviction. Just yesterday, His Majesty King Mswati III unveiled a bold 5.2 billion Emalangeni strategic oil reserve model. We have known about the ambition, but we have seen the model now, which is a move that is designed to what they call securing fuel supply, as well as shield our economy from external oil shocks, as well as reduce our reliance on volatile global energy markets. So part of that is what we are seeing. And indeed, Sanele has spoken about it when we look at what has happened, particularly in the Eurozone. But it's not a standalone initiative. We are seeing the latest Forbes Africa Undiscovered series, where Eswatini is quietly becoming a case study in how small nations can punch above their weight, modernizing its infrastructure, scaling energy dependence, rolling out trade access strategies under the AFCFTA, and building fiscal buffers like the SACU and Stabilization Fund. So a couple of questions now as we enter the last 10 minutes. What does Eswatini's strategy look like in the context of a slowing, inward-looking world? What lessons can we take from the IMF Springs meeting, and how should policymakers respond? Sanele, we're looking at the glass half full perspective. You always love to speak about, a silver lining always presenting itself amid shocks in the global economy. Let's zoom in on this strategic oil reserve. 5.2 billion in Malangeni, that's the model. It is a great investment that could safeguard us in uncertain times like this one.
True. So we do expect those capital expenditures right now to show up our growth prospects, such that we do expect somewhat of a downward revision, but not by a huge magnitude. So probably from that 4.2 to a 4% type or 4.1 type, purely because we are embarking on these, huge capital projects, which are also what we call critical enablers to economic activity, right? If you have a strategic oil reserve, that means if, for example, it's a reserve that can carry, like, say, 5 or 6 months of the country's energy requirements or fuel requirements. So what it means is within those 5 months, we can always, the energy company can always, or the petroleum company can always play around with the markets and look at when markets are favorable for us to purchase at lower prices, and then when the markets start to surge again, we are able to supply whatever we had on that low price. So we're going to see that, catalyzing commerce and bringing a bit of predictability into our fuel. Into our fuel supply chain, and knowing that we can plan very well for the next 6 months, unlike right now where we are completely at the mercy of international forces, right? We are always affected by the exchange rate, and that's going to determine how much we pay at the pumps. We're always affected by the global oil output. That also determines how much we pay at the pump, right? So this strategic oil reserve is going to become a critical enabler, and it's going to make doing business in Eswatini very predictable.
We hope that we are not going to see any impediments within this particular capital project. We've heard a lot of back and forth conversations around one very important one in the country that has taken a lot of money. So with this one, as the King has warned and urged and pleaded that can there be no misuse of funds, and can we see these projects happen as fast as they can? But a big question, can we realistically grow beyond the IMF's low income projections? Now, that is given our fiscal reforms, our energy independence efforts, as well as the regional trade access under the AFCFTA, which you have mentioned, as well as SACU.
Yes, we can.
Okay.
But we need to strategize and be deliberate about it. For example, we need to put our weight behind the Buy campaign. Therefore, what we need to be doing is substituting for our import propensity. If you look back, import substitution has always been amongst the key strategies that the government of Eswatini always wants to push, where we grow our own dependency to a state of self-sufficiency, and we consume what is here, what is grown locally. So that way we are able to sustain the economy, and we become an export-driven economy. So there's still a bit of a wiggle room there, which we can actually leverage on, and access arrangements such as your AFCTA, COMESA, and other trade agreements within the region, and use those. And also, what we need to be able to do as a country, Mr. Nxumalo, is we need to make sure that we are reforming the procurement system. Right now, we're talking of 5 billion. That's a lot of money.
A lot.
In capital expenditures. How do we make sure that, say, 3 or 4 billion of that money stays in Eswatini? That's one of the things that we need to make sure that as a country we fix. We've always spoken about this, where we're saying we are doing a lot of capital expenditure projects, but none of those seem to benefit the local companies.
Because we are procuring from outside of Eswatini.
And we don't have any strategies in place to make sure that local capacity is being built.
Yeah.
For example, you look at the dams we are building, we've built quite a lot of dams. So why is it that we don't have a local company that's quite capable of building those dams? So we need to structure these joint ventures in a way that there is a transfer of skills.
We have to be really strategic when we do that, because that's exactly what is at play in the U.S. That is exactly what they are trying to do as they make America great. But it seems they've shot themselves on the foot. Perhaps their strategy wasn't as smart as they thought it was going to be. Sanele, picture this. You are sitting across the Prime Minister. We will pretend that I am the Prime Minister. And next to me is the Finance Minister, Neil Reichenberg, and perhaps next to him will be Dr. Phil, the central bank governor. What would be your single most urgent recommendation for how Eswatini can turn its global volatility, into strategic advantage?
So I have a couple. Just two.
Remember, I'm the Prime Minister.
Yeah. So, Your Excellency, the first thing we need to do, number one, is support Eswatini to trade. Aid them for trade, aid them to take advantage of the regional and global arrangements. Let's make sure that we're able to take advantage of the Euro quotas, the quotas that we have in the European markets. And then secondly, there's a lot of global volatility happening on the background of VAT volatility in the kingdom. So that means in this volatile global environment, we can afford to give a bit of a stimulus to support businesses to survive, purely because we're now going to have this windfall in terms of VAT money if South Africa goes through with it. So we have to think around how we can support companies to trade, how we can offset this 10% tariff shock that's coming through from the US, and how we do that in a way that grows the capacity of local exporting industries to actually grow to a level where they can start gaining what we call economies of scale, where you bring down the cost of production while you are expanding output. So that's what we need to do.
Sanele, thank you so much for your time, and we, as the Prime Minister's office, we really appreciate, and we might heed to your recommendations, but my team is going to certainly look into that. What you are submitting is that we should empower trade by means of offsetting this 10% tariff shock from the USA. Now, in a world tightening its grip, Eswatini is choosing to build, not brace. As the global economy recalibrates, our next move might just define the decade. And certainly, as a praying country, that is exactly what we are praying for. Let us be earnest in our resolve, in our capital projects, in our ambitions, as well as in our duties. These different portfolio ministries, we hope that no corruption will be seen, but a lot of sustainable and very smart ideas will get back into that sustainable path amidst this very, very shocking global economic shocks. Let's go for a net break. We'll be back shortly.
Masosha lokumqoka ukuthi ngesikhathi sonke nikhombise sive ukuthi emasotsha akasiwo titha tesive kepha emasotsha akhona ukuthi sive sonke sihlale ngekuthula sihlale ngekujabula sitokhona kwenda imisebenzi ngendlela elifanele bekulena.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
2 minutes after 7, this is our English news. His Majesty King Mswati III had some wise words of edification for church leaders on Tuesday. His Majesty urged the men of the cloth to emulate the disciples of Jesus Christ, who never walked away from the ministry of preaching the gospel when faced with life-threatening encounters. His Majesty was addressing the pastors when they bade farewell to the King at Ngabezweni Royal Residence on Tuesday, and the event marked the end of this year's Easter services.
After participating in the Easter services, church leaders bade farewell to His Majesty the King at Ngabezweni Royal Residence. On Saturdays, as part of the Easter tradition, pastors greet His Majesty and discuss the Bible in His presence. They seek biblical answers to pertinent topics and questions which they raise before the King, who also offers biblical advice to the men of the cloth. Tuesdays are reserved for bidding farewell to His Majesty. Joined by Makhosikati, Their Royal Highnesses Bantu Benkosi and the Prime Minister, His Majesty edified church leaders with some encouraging words, encouraging them to follow the example of the disciples of Jesus Christ, who preached the gospel despite paying a heavy price.
Sikanye kanye singumfelandzawonye siyakwati kulishumayela live lenkosi kuze kube ngunaphakade nembala lasho lithi baphuma bashone emhlabeni wonke jikelele lokhu silapha nje Eswatini sihleli ngelive lenkosi siyalalela kungenxa yabo labo bafundisi labaphuma batinikela kulikhuni liyasho ke nelive ukuthi ngamunye indlela lebe babulawa ngayo kepha kuphathaleke ukuthi noma sebavile ukuthi lomnye wabo ubulewe kalukhuni bathi lesifungo lesithethe ukuthi sawuba umfelandzawonye angeke sikhweshekiso bafundisi.
Last weekend on Sunday, the King officially opened the League of Churches offices at Nkanini. The king says he will ensure that the structure is equipped with all necessary equipment and amenities needed to operate an office.
Kwathi lamanye amahhovisi abonakala ukuthi ayashoda nalantenye tindlu tisashoda lokwa lengisike namuhla abafundisi konke lokho lokushodako sekutawulungiswa kufakwe nemakhompyutha ekhasi bafundisi.
Prime Minister Russell Miso Dlamini says God is pleased with His Majesty for his unwavering commitment to inspire the nation to worship Him.
Kusukela ngalesihlanu kuze kube ngilesikhathi solo inkosi nendlovukazi hleti nesive uhlanganyelwe kubongwa uNkulunkulu. Engakusho nje kafishane ukuthi akusiko okuncane lokhu phambi kwaNkulunkulu kukhulu.
The king's overseer in the Christian fraternity, His Royal Highness Prince Simelane, delivered a brief sermon based on Luke chapter 10 verse 20.
Kwendeke nje ubawushilo sibavulile emehlo bayabona labangakhulumi bakhuluma labangeva sibashiye bayeva tishosha sitisukumisile uthi Jesu ngiyanifu ningathokotiswa ngilokho kepha thokotiswani kusemagameni alotshiwa abhaliwe encwadini yekuphila.
His Majesty blessed two bishops who have succeeded their deceased predecessors. Bishop Sambulo Simelane from Majuba Church succeeded Bishop John Simelane, while the new Pentecostal Apostolic Church of Christ presented Bishop David Msebi, who has succeeded Wilson Msebi. As church leaders return to shepherd their flock in their respective churches, they will draw inspiration from sermons that were delivered by their majesties during the course of the Easter services. His Majesty declared the year 2025 as the year of transformation and reforms that will change the social landscape of Eswatini, while Her Majesty the Ndlovukazi expressed concern about the rising cases of murders in the country, while also urging the nation to appreciate every effort to congregate and worship God freely. This is a report by Sandile Makanya and Zweli Masuku at Ngabezweni Royal Residence.
The presidential special envoy of the President of Taiwan, Dr. Lin Chia-lung, has presented Her Majesty the Queen Mother with over 9 million emalangeni to boost the Women's Startup Microfinance Revolving Fund. The Queen Mother received the funds at Eswatini Royal Residence during the presidential envoy's courtesy call on Her Majesty. Her Majesty was joined by the Deputy Prime Minister, Honorable Kusile, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Senator Polile Shakantu.
Thank you. The special presidential envoy of the President of Taiwan, Dr. Lin Chia-lung, arrived at Eswatini Royal Residence to pay a courtesy call on Her Majesty the Queen Mother following his arrival in the kingdom on Tuesday. Dr. Lin, who is the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Taiwan, who will join Eswatini in celebration of His Majesty's 57th birthday ceremony in Hlangano as the representative of the President of Taiwan, leads a delegation that includes Taiwanese investors who will explore opportunities to help improve the kingdom's economic resilience. The President of Taiwan, His Excellency Lai Ching-te, is fully supportive of Her Majesty's initiatives to empower women in Eswatini. To demonstrate his support towards Her Majesty's initiatives, the President delegated the presidential envoy to present Her Majesty with 9.2 million emalangeni to boost the Women Business Startup Microfinance Revolving Fund. From Eswatini Royal Residence, the presidential envoy proceeded to Lozita Palace, where he was expected to pay a courtesy call on His Majesty King Mswati III and further join His Majesty, who was expected to launch the strategic oil reserve facility. On the news, I am Sandile Makanya reporting from Lutsitsini Royal Residence with Temba Mamba in Zulimasugu.
It is all systems go for His Majesty King Mswati III's 57th birthday celebration that is set for this Friday. His Excellency the Prime Minister Russell Miso Dlamini says preparations seem to be at advanced stages. Now, the Premier has said this during the final rehearsals that were held at King Sopuza II Stadium in Nhlangano.
On Friday, Maswati will converge at the King Sopuza II Stadium to celebrate His Majesty King Mswati III's 57th birthday. It goes without saying that performances for such an occasion, which is expected to draw guests from beyond the kingdom's borders, have to be top-notch. Final rehearsals were held on Wednesday, and part of those witnessing them was the Prime Minister, His Excellency Russell Dlamini, who said everything was going well.
Vela sesingeni lesetulu mukhulu lo msebenzi lesewendiwe la siyakhona lokho ukuthi lokuncane lokuselecta bekuphelile ngalolu suku lolukhulu lwenkosi ngaba nje ukugcizelela ukuthi cha konke kuhamba kahle sive asiphelele ngetinkani sito uhadalisela inkosi ngesuku lwayo le birthday kuyabanza ke inhlangano abete bantu malungiselele ukuthi batawufuthuma lokho ukuthi nje ke njalo umsebenzi wenkosi usuka ku region lena uya kulenye usuka ku region leyo kwentelwa kona ukuthi usonzelela kubantu bonke abantu bakhona uya demcimbini baphindze babuyele emakhaya basuke emakhaya labahlala khona lokho njengoba okukhulu nokuthi ke laba nje labatabe bagidza badlala bento emidlalo konke baqhamuka la sifundzeni saseshiselweni uhulumende ke uyababambisa bonke labo laba ingcenye lomsebenzi.
The Premier moved on to the Mbangweni Royal Residence, where celebrations are expected to proceed to. There, he also found preparations at an advanced stage. During the rehearsals, different units, which include entertainment, the army, health, and emergency services, said they were ready for the big day. It is now up to Emaswati to turn up in their best outfits, fit for the royal occasion. For Eswatini TV News, Temgosi Mavimbela, Nhlangano.
The Honorable Minister of Commerce, Industry and Trade, Ngoba Khumalo, says with support from Taiwan, now the country is working to improve the ease of doing business and unlock new trade opportunities. The Honorable Minister was speaking during a business seminar with Taiwanese entrepreneurs and investors.
The Ministry of Commerce, Industry and Trade has hosted a business seminar with Taiwanese entrepreneurs and investors. The Honorable Minister of Commerce, Ngoba Khumalo, says Eswatini is setting its sights on becoming a more competitive trading nation.
His Majesty's government is very keen to assist in securing strategic partnerships and also ensure that we are forward integrating as opposed to exporting raw materials and doing primary manufacturing. We want to venture into tertiary manufacturing and real value addition because we also want to improve the quality of the jobs that we create. These are therefore strategic opportunities to collaborate with local companies.
Eswatini Investment Promotion Authority Board Chairperson Theo Hlope says their goal is to cut the red tape, enhance efficiency and open doors for trade.
Our goal is simple: to showcase Eswatini's business potential and provide a clear, practical pathway for doing business in our country. IPA serves as your gateway to investing in Eswatini. We provide end-to-end support from initial inquiries, approvals, and setup, all the way to aftercare.
Chairperson of the Taiwan Optical Platform, Tu Chen Lai, spoke on behalf of the investors.
We are here to listen and to understand what Eswatini needs, what your business and community seek, and how we can collaborate in a way that They are mutually beneficial, inclusive, and sustainable.
The Kingdom of Eswatini exports goods to Taiwan such as honey, fruits and beverages worth over 6 million emadlangeni per year. Reporting Samkalsiwe Khoza and Themba Shabangu, Babane.
The Honorable Minister of Home Affairs, Her Royal Highness Princess Lindiwe, says the ministry has prepared transportation for all the people around the Shiselweni region who will want to attend the King's birthday celebration at the King Sobhuza II Stadium on Friday. The minister has said that she has said this at the Mbangweni Royal residence after the final rehearsals that were held at the stadium.
Nina bakangwane vele silungisile kwekuhamba kakhulu lapha eshiselweni nje. Ishiselo vele sitawukhokha emabhasi latabathatha, timotolo letabathatha tibalethe ngoba ishiselo ngiyona ihamba embili. Ishiselo ngiyona vele ingwenyama ekhethe ukuthi namhla iyawugidza neshiselo losuku loluhle kangaka.
We have made transport arrangements in particular for the Shiselweni region. Vehicles will be transporting people from different areas of the Shiselweni region. Although transport arrangements have not been made for all regions, eMaswati from all walks of life are invited to come to the event. This is an event where all eMaswati will celebrate with their majesties. We invite all eMaswati to be part of this important event.
The Honorable Minister of Natural Resources and Energy, Senator His Royal Highness Prince Lonko Kela, is calling for an urgent need for support from one of the country's key partners, Taiwan, in mineral development and improved water access. The minister was speaking during a business seminar with Taiwanese entrepreneurs and investors.
During a business seminar with Taiwanese entrepreneurs and investors hosted by the Minister of Commerce, Industry and Trade, the Honorable Minister of Natural Resources and Energy, Senator Prince Lonko Kela, said Eswatini faces significant challenges in both water access and mineral development, and to address these issues, the country is seeking technical and financial support from Taiwan.
We are very keen to receive investment from Taiwan in the field of mining, water, which we were part of it, which is part of us. In water, I'm told, we are looking for meters, prepaid meters. Prepaid meters are important for us because our people are looking at connecting on prepaid. Parliament has called on us to work on that, and we're still looking for partners to connect the whole country. In mining, we have coal, we have gold, we have diamond, we have all precious minerals. We have the earth minerals that are rare in the world, and we have just done geomapping. We are looking at working with Taiwan investors in the field of constructing and operating strategic oil in the country.
Zooming into the mining sector, physical contribution from the mining operation to Eswatini's GDP is 2% and also accounts for 2% of export earnings. Reporting Samkalsiwe Khoza and Themba Shabangu, Babane.
The Secretary General of the Organization of African, Caribbean and Pacific States, His Excellency Musa Saleba Traki, says the Kingdom of Eswatini's stability gives it a unique advantage in driving sustainable development across the region. The Secretary General was speaking during a press engagement on Wednesday.
His Excellency Musa Salah Batraki, the Secretary General of the Organization of African, Caribbean and Pacific States, OACPS, is in the Kingdom of Eswatini for an official visit. The Secretary General was welcomed by the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, Senator Polesha Kantu, who also serves as the President of the OACPS Council of Ministers, together with His Excellency Sibusisiwe Mngome Zulu, the Ambassador of Eswatini to Belgium, and Chairperson of the OACPS Committee of Ambassadors. Speaking during a media engagement on Wednesday, the OACPS Secretary General praised Eswatini for its commitment to peace and stability, calling it a crucial foundation for long-term economic growth.
Eswatini plays an important role at the OACPS. He's heading the Committee of Ambassadors at the moment, the Council of Ministers, and there is an investment, a personal investment from the King, His Majesty, on all the discussions around, unity. And these are, I think, main things that we can see as conditions. You have a country that actually is landlocked, of course, that has a lot of cultural aspects that to show to other countries, that can also somehow, demonstrate a certain engagement, a vision for his population. So these are, for me, all important factors that can really also motivate other African countries to look like Eswatini as well. And the fact that, this leadership is there, culturally really inherent in the country. It gives us the impression that we also need to invest on our own values. And the African values are the one of the continent. We need to share them. We need to make sure that it is known by everybody, and we need to also promote them somehow.
The main goals of the OACPS centers around the sustainable development of its members and their gradual integration into the global economy. Reporting Samgal Siwekoza and Temba Shabangu, Ezulwini.
The Director of Veterinary Services, Dr. Xolani Dlamini, says the country is now self-sufficient in poultry and pork production. The director says the kingdom is taking steps to boost its beef production now.
We are at the level of self-sufficiency when it comes to meat, poultry meat, chicken meat, and table eggs. These are produced wholly within the country in general. What we actually import is inputs, especially fertile eggs and ingredients for feed. That still comes from outside. But the production itself, the poultry production, from hatching up to marketing is all localized. Since about 2007 for poultry, and for pork, now that we have a project that we are running with the Chinese, Taiwan. So we were able to, because one of the challenges was breeding stock. So now we're able to produce enough breeding stock in the country, and we were able to do artificial insemination. And so so as a result, production increased. And where we are now, we are depending on pork that is produced locally, fresh pork that is produced locally. And so since 2019, we have not been importing any fresh pork. We're actually importing processed pork. Yes, we still import, but fresh pork we get almost wholly from the country.
Taiwan has announced a major boost of over 9.2 million emalangeni in support for the Women's Microfinancing Revolving Fund. This powerful announcement was made by His Excellency Dr. Chia Lung, Taiwan's Minister of Foreign Affairs, during a special event held at Sibanesami at Ezulwini. The support is a game changer for women entrepreneurs across the kingdom.
Today, I'm happy to announce that Taiwan will inject another $500,000 into the fund to make the project even more powerful for empowering women and youth in our partners, those people in Eswatini.
The Deputy Prime Minister Kusile says the fund has changed the lives of many women in Eswatini.
Your commitment to empowering women in Eswatini through this fund has not only impacted individual lives, but has also uplifted entire communities.
The Minister for Commerce, Industry and Trade, Honorable Manqoba Khumalo, says through this fund, women have been able to establish sustainable businesses.
Women Business Startup Microfinance Revolving Fund, Wentega, is an initiative designed to support women entrepreneurs in breaking financial barriers and building sustainable businesses. This fund is more than just financial assistance, but it is a promise that dreams will ultimately be realized.
According to the Taiwan Technical Mission, the Women's Microfinancing Revolving Fund has disbursed over 9.6 million emalangeni since it was launched in the year 2023. Reporting Nelson Dlangamandla, Vuminkosi Nzinisa, Ezulwini.
In what will come as great news and a major boost to local creatives, the Minister of Commerce, Industry and Trade, Honorable Manqoba Khumalo, has announced a 200,000 emalangeni allocation to support the creative industry through the Eswatini Copyright and Neighboring Rights Society. The announcement was made during the World Book and Copyright Day celebrations that were held at Happy Valley in Ezulwini.
We have an initial seed allocation of 100,000 emalangeni to Eswatini Copyright and Neighboring Rights Society to establish what we call a creative industry development fund. The fund will offer small grants. It's not a lot of money initially, but it's a pilot. If it's a success, it will keep growing. And we'll offer small grants to members for professional growth and to access new markets. Number two, we are also proud to announce another 100,000 emalangeni for a national short film competition. Sicela announcer as well, ukuthi sithuma le Copyright Society ukuthi establish health and wellness program.
Samgeliso Nxumalo, chairperson of the Eswatini Copyright Society, says for an industry that has long struggled for recognition and resources, this comes at a much-needed shot in the arm and a step towards building a thriving, sustainable, creative economy.
And in logo, let's to wake up each morning, just like somebody else avuga, I am 17 and 8 to 5 yake. The creative also has that aspiration to be able to wake up every morning, go into their studio and create decent work, participating in economic growth. The whole purpose of unlocking royalties is about ensuring that.
UNESCO Secretary General Lwandle Simelane says creatives should be treated as business people.
Know your rights, understand the legal frameworks. We have a very nice act. We are folklore. Please delve into it.
Creatives who have applied to be members of the society currently stand at 50. Reporting Nelson Dlangamandla, Vuminkosi Nzinisa, Ezulwini.
In our sports news, President of CAF, Dr. Patrice Motsepe, has announced that all Africans should have stadiums that meet both CAF and FIFA standards.
And, I spent many years in Swaziland and had a huge privilege of being educated there, met some of the most wonderful people. Thank you so much. Let me put it more positive. Every single one of the countries that are represented by our member association presidents, we need you to play football in your country, So we are working together with your heads of states, and I'll be visiting again some of the heads of state because the partnership is so important to build every single country in Africa. But we need to make sure that in every single African country, that you play football in front of your supporters, in front of your fans. And that's partly why this $1 billion CAF commitment over the next 8 years that I spoke about, which is going very well, and make sure that we can build stadiums. In every country there must be a stadium, and that is at the CAF and FIFA standards.
Local athletes, being Melusi Kumalo and Tobile Ngwenyama, have left the kingdom to Iraq to take part of the half marathon organized by Athletics Association in Iraq. Eswatini Sports and Recreational Council Darius Lomo has urged the duo to raise the country's flag high while in Iraq.
Now show us, using the power of the crocodile, that indeed it is your territory, and go and extend that power and legacy, not only within Eswatini now, but your name, we want it inscribed in international records now. The president is 100% correct. As a council on behalf of government, working collaboratively with the Executive Board of Athletics Eswatini, we are putting focus once again, special attention to marathon running in Eswatini. Not that we were not, but now we are giving it special attention because we know where we're coming from. And we want other Mabuzas of Eswatini to come through. And such that even that legacy should shift elsewhere and be taken by others. In athletics, we exchange batons. Maybe we can now shift focus from Mabuza of Eswatini to Kumalo of Eswatini, to Ngwenyama of Eswatini.
By means of parting with our English news, we do want to extend that there's breaking news coming out of South Africa that Finance Minister Enoch Gondongwana has reversed the proposed VAT increase. Now the rate will remain at 15%. So we will get into what this means for investors as well as for households and perhaps the region at 2 p.m. Central African time on our business show Market View. So be sure to catch that as well.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.za.
Kude lesinye isikhathi ngaphandle kwalesi.
Aba research bafunze.
Being risky means ukuthi nalokuwa kwayo kulula.
Nathi kufuna sente ukukhiqiza lokusemndeni.
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart and a desire for the unexpected. You embark on journeys to discover new worlds, full of wonder. You choose a path to awaken your senses, a world to make you look up and realize just how inspiring this life can be. Arrive and awaken your heart. Explore life in ways only thought possible in your dreams. Discover just how far you'll go to expand your understanding of life's greatest mysteries. There's just one place on this planet with so much to offer. Now is the time for you to have the royal experience.
The board, management, and staff of Eswatini National Petroleum Company join the nation in wishing His Majesty King Mswati III a happy, prosperous 57th birthday. Lunwelelo lutse siloskhulu. Hala lambangazitha.
Asibenze sinemukele ngo-25 minutes before 8 o'clock siqhubeka nalo hlelo lethu lomhla ekseni sibuka tindzaba tamalale veva lapha eSwatini. Litiko latempilo ngestatements lesi release this week kuthandi livetile ukuthi bantfu lasebashile emhlabeni ngaso sifo samalale veva balinganiselwa kula bane. Kanti netinombolo tema cases noma ke imibiko levelile kusukela ngaJuly last year kuthi kube ngimanje iyafika ku 296 sifunza sakahoho ke hamba embili ngama cases la 124. Live leSwatini ke like lanconywa phambilini kwekuthi lisebenta ngalokukhulu ukutikhandla kuncobeni isifo samalale veve. Ngabe lokhu akusibuyiseli nemuva silive leSwatini njengoba besolo senta kahle ngekuba before kube khona lama cases lawo. To shed some light, we are joined by the program director and program manager losuka Eswatini National Malaria Control Program. Asivedele nje sithombe ukuthi sikuphi manje lokusekuvele nje lama cases lawa ingabe ngimaphi ama interventions livele litawenda kuzama ukuthi siphindze sibele emuva kube bede ama cases noma ke kube bede ema deaths. Sekuvusele Zuli siyabonga ukuthi benathi lomhla ekseni kumbe sisibonile statement I think vele kusithusile ukuthi how sesishiye abantu 4 even kumbe kusivetela nje comprehensive situation analysis kuthi kwendekane manje 296 cases from last year July to date. What's happening?
Thank you so much, Lulu. Sibonge ngivusele babukeli emakhaya and sibonge opportunity ukuthi silitiko letempilo ukuthi nesinvite ukuthi sito khutsata sito spreader a message ukuthi malale veva kulamalanga dinombolo diyakhuphuka. It's true statement lesentiwe Ministry of Health isiqinisile we are seeing an increase in cases and unfortunately as soshito kube nebantfu labashiyako kulawo ma cases lokuyimfo lengasi kahle kakhulu njengelive lelifuna ku eliminate malaria lelifuna kumncoba malale veva akafanele ukuthi ngabe ukhona umuntu losashona abulawe ngumalale veva. Why? Because malale veva uyavikeleka, malale veva futhi uyelapheka. I-treatment yethu lesinayo kuma facility effective enough ukuthi umuntu angashoni ngamalale veva. But ke unfortunately bashonile for every death lesiyipholako siltiko we do an audit and of all 4 deaths sithole ukuthi it's like treatment seeking behavior. Bamfu bayaphuta kuya emtholampilo nabadiva noma bangaphili kahle. So kube ngaleso zaphu leso khanze ukuthi seba unfortunately sebayashona sebayafa. On the question, maybe to also elaborate, the cases akhulile ayasephusa nathi compared to last year. Last year, ngenyanga nje yanga March, we had recorded 40 cases, but this year sikhuphuke sabana 75 cases. Nyalonga April, same story. April nakhona ema cases bega low. Nyalo we approaching 60 cases la confirmed, which is far above ema cases we saw last year. That being said, we still in pursuit of our goal of elimination as a region. Elimination may be the region has to eliminate by 2030, but as a country, setela le before 2030, sendela gona kutilungiselela ukuthi by 2030 sibe sesikahle. So we're still on course, even though ema cases enyukile, we're still positive ukuthi we'll reach that goal of malaria elimination.
Okay, so kulo follow na was it local cases noma mhlambe labo labashiya emhlabeni bebavakashele lamanye amave lapho khona malaria veva asetulu kakhulu?
Good, the 4 cases we've seen are distributed through the month. 1 case sayibona happened kaFokolwago Health Facility. Lapho khona a 74-year-old male wasenhlangiyavuka washiya khona. That case bekuyi local case. In January, we had a minor scale lapho khona we saw an increase in cases coming from Hlangiyavuka, which is a community lebe surrounded by sugarcane fields, kunemfula, iflat, and also there's also illegal farming in that area. After the heavy rains we received in January, we saw a peak in cases coming from Hlangiyavuka. So that 70-year-old male bekangakake wavakasha ndzawo, and suspicion yakhe malaria was very low. Bekahleli ekhaya until waba vele severe kind of agijimela kaFokolwago. Unfortunately, they couldn't save him. Washona kanjalo. Then in February, we saw 2 cases. 2 of the cases actually were imported, had visited a malaria endemic country. Beba vakashele indzawo lapho khona kuna malaria. 1 case is from Ndobandoba. The other case was shona Ekuchepa facility hospital. Beba vakashile, beba vakasha. And nabo nababuya, they didn't suspect malaria, but delay abahlala ekhaya. Lengengakungeta nje ngichaze kubabukele emakhaya ukuthi timpawu ta malaria, it's so unfortunate ukuthi they mimic the other conditions. You'll have your fever, you'll have a headache, joint pains, nausea, weak, emama umtimba utive ukhathele udziniwe, loss of appetite. So other conditions, they also present with the same. So kumcoka lokuthi nawudiva noma sengasima laleveva nyalo setiningi tifo letikhona bo COVID bebakhona tonke tikhona nawudiva nje ungaphili kahle phuma emfolamino lo sevutane nawe for a test. Abahlengikati bakhona ba trained, they'll test you. If it's malaria treat usengaka progress uze ube severe ugule kakhulu khanzesi noma sogcina soyashiya.
Okay.
And the last case, unfortunately, yendeke nyalo March, which is very sad ngoba it was a maternal death. Magelo khulelwe washona kanjalo because of malaria. Logo kukabi kakhulu. Especially so uyabona ukuthi 2 lives have been lost. Why? Because of malaria. Malaria sifo lebesingelapheka, less preventable as well. Because even if uto travel, if you know you'll be traveling to a malaria endemic area, lesikusho silitiko letempilo ukuthi please take chemoprophylaxis before you travel. 2 weeks before you travel. Nyaloge sibonge kuhulumende ukuthi we also have a chemoprophylaxis or a treatment, a preventive logo drug, longayinatha even a day before. Let's say nje umphathi wakho luyakutshela kusasa ukuthi ngifuna uye eMozambique, you can still rush to a facility bakunike loto inatha even a day before your travel. So sekude sizathu sokuthi ungayithathi i-prevention before you travel.
Okay, ingabe akhona any measures that are put in place mhlambe kumekise border nje eMozambique now eMozambique le lapho khona kutoba nama health officials la tawufuna ukuhlola ukuthi vele did you take medication yakho eMozambique nje utawufika uphephile nivile mhlambe nangathiwa ulonyanga imbuzilwane ngisho sowungena so buye Eswatini akukhona ama measures la thathwako kuzama mhlambe kunciphisa wona lama cases njengoba lona nje beka travel eMozambique akazange athathe medication nakabuya akazange mhlambe atinaka kahle kukhona lokwendiwako ngekubambisana netiko letasekhaya.
Thank you for that question. Yes, as a Minister of Health, we have engaged Litiko lasekhaya. They have been capacitated. Port of entry epfu kokuthi badinga amalaleveva bafundziseke ngamalaleveva, and we have pamphlets lesesiwabeka khona ukhanze ukuthi umuntu angayitithathela afunze atokwati ngetimpawu tamalaleveva. But when it comes to treatment, it has to be prescribed or it has to be issued by a clinician. So asiyibeki ema-gating epfu. Why also now uyithatha i-prevention yakho kufuthi kube kuthi uyohlala noma uyolala kuleyo ndzawo emalanga lathide. So to avoid siyati, especially ngibekise ngaMozambique, you can go to Mozambique ekuseni ubuye entsambama. Si avoid a situation yokuthi na uphume ekuseni uthathe amaphilisi akho uyabuya kanjalo kan angeke uze ube exposed. Exposure yakho I minimal utohamba ubuye. And also we know we also have frequent travelers. Laba traveler laba yake ukucupha khona emasekeni almost every week. Nasithi asibeke lapho nalapho dokhanza sesiyaba exposure to resistance ngoba leyo muntu leyo every week aphuma utoyinathi, and also iconsistency dokhanza seloyo muntu loyo akasayinathi adherence to that, akasayinathi ayicede the full course kanti futhi athi nakakunika nesi akutshele ukuthi utoyinatha uze uyicede nini uyinathe kanjalo. So we don't do that, but ke during
so
the
now 30 seconds.
During COVID, there'll be scanners, back scanner for temperature. Nangabe so presenter with the signs, they'll pick the temperature, then they'll test you.
All right, thanks so much, Eswatini. Zoli, we are program manager, Losoga Eswatini National Control Malaria Control Program as vedela just trombe. So ukuthi yes, ukona vele labashile labane la bayacila ukuthi vele siqhubeke sidiqaphele letimpawu. Mangabe kukhona timpawu lesivako siphuthumele emtholampilo sokhona ukuthi sithole lusito masinyane. Sibadle temakethe sitabe siqhubeke.
Bayethe wona phakathi litiko le public service lekungilona mother ministry yamatiko onke la khona kahulumende lithi nalo alitimbanzakani nesive sonke semaswati ekufiseleni imbubu yemhlaba i-57th birthday. Sithi khula Mlisa, khula Nzanzane live. Silitiko sithi kasivete kokuthi siyatimbanzakanya nangwewe ngwenyama. Sithi ke asiphe leso sipho ingwenyama yemaswati asakhula wekunene. Litiko lisasebenta lento umsebenzi lomkhulu welive unengileli kwentile dinengine ingcinamba ledibene nato. Kepha nje sithi as-highlight logo lengathi siku-achievile silitiko le-public service. Kokucala nje kungaba kubonga. Ngibonga i-cabinet yengwenyama, ngibonga i-management yelitiko, ngibonga ema-PSAs umsebenzi lomuhle kangaka lawentile. Asakhuluma tindzaba letitsinsa tisebenzi. Siyati ke ukuthi litiko umsebenzi lomnye lomkhulu walo kukhulumisa tindzaba letitsinsa tisebenzi, i-welfare yetisebenzi. Ngithi kangibeke kokuthi sibe nomoya lomuhle sasebenta leto tindzaba leto. Ubona ukuthi live libe nokuthula. Sithi ke ingwenyama ulonkwe wakhe wekunene lesitimbanzakanya naye. Nathi siyampha lokuthula, sitambambisa wekunene. Uyohlala ukhona lo moya ukubambisana nema-PSAs. Lithule live tindzaba nathi khona tikhulunyiswe ngekuhloniphana ngekuzotha kuze live litophumelela embili nokuthi live likhona ukuthuthuka li-attract nema-investors ngokuthi kunokuthula. Lokhu sikubone nasente ema-negotiations lapho khona sathi sehleli sasheshe savumelana etindzabeni kokuthi bekunene akube khona labakutholako kulomnyaka lesuka kuwo siyakhumbula ukuthi batholile 4% baphinde bathola na 1% lobe once off futhi ke sagijimisa indzaba lethinta 70 siyikhulumisile nendzaba esa review siyakukhumbula ukuthi sa review bekufanele iqale ngeminyaka wa 2021 kepha ngetimo tetimali isimo semnotho sangakhona ukuthi singakwenda lokho kepha ke kuthe kule financial year lesisuka kuyo sawuqala lo msebenzi wokuthi sesingathi khulumisa tindzaba letithinta isa review ngithi ke kangivete ukuthi lo msebenzi lomhle kangaka umukelwa ngitho tonke tsebenza uhulumende futhi ke kude sebenza uhulumende sashiya ngaphandle kungaba ma civil servants sidela kuma security forces nawo atawusitakala etindzabeni tesa review lokusho ukuthi ke cha cishe kusahamba kahle njengoba sathi ukuthi kunema consultants la khona kunaleyo emergency growth bese kuba na umelusi capital lokuyinkampani yakhona la Eswatini ibambisene neyokuhamba labenda lo msebenzi lomhle kangaka lokunye lesikubonile noma ke lesikuachievile kube indzaba ye-PMS siyokhumbula ukuthi itolo bekude lithulusi lelicacile lelikhona ku measure kusebenta kwethi 70 tahulumende kepha ke uhulumende wengonyama so introduce iPMS lesi introduce last year kuthi sale ikhika in sitosebentela tikwayo si public service buhle ke bePMS leyalonjwa mhla ka4 April 2024 unabo sisebenzise yathi ukuthi siyosebenzana nokuthi ngimaphi ema targets lekufanele our meet nekokuthi abe organized nakhona asebenta abe ajabulile because uyathi lokhu usebenza so iPMS ke sithi siyayibonga kakhulu lokuthi iintroduce uhulumende wengonyama sitakhona ke kumenta uhulumende ukuthi akhicide abonakala ukuthi uyasebenza esiveni seMaswati kuphele lokuthi kahulumende siyaya singasidakali but siyakholelwa futhi siyethemba lokuthi le PMS itawenda ukuthi isebenza uhulumende disebente ngalokujabulisako nekokuthi ke tindzaba temathulusi lebaye bakhale ngawo ukuthi akekho kahulumende le PMS itawusisita nakuthi siwa identify ngifuna ukuthi wathi lawo mathulusi la tawadzinga letisebenzi ngaleso sikhathi kuze tikhona kwenta umsebenzi wato tisebenza lo munye umsebenzi lomhle kube indzaba lekhalisa umhlaba wonke jikelele ikakhulu iqale tiko laka education bese ke yena vela isiveni sonke seMaswati indzaba yabothishela labaqasha ngama contracts ka education umuntu umkhandla ukuthi uqualified une diploma une degree but ke kucasheka kwakhe ukhandla ukuthi akusesiko nakhona akulesikhala lesisi si permanent kepha aqashwe abe on contract sithi ke si public service sibambisene netiko laka education sichubekile satama ukuthi nciphisa letinombolo tabothishela labasebenza ngecontract lokungikhuluma nje kusele bothishela laba 1311 lesathi ukuthi ke cha nanabo kufuna siba convert babe permanent and pensionable batawukhona nanabo ukuthi bafanele nabothishela bonke bafanele nama civil servants onke sebangakhona ukuthatha ikwelede batakhele emakhaya batithengele imoto bendelo kwanaloko ngekwati ukuthi bama public servants la qashwe ngaloku gcwele umsebenzi lomnye wethu kubuka tindzaba te accommodation si public service ngithi kanguvete ukuthi ematiko lamanengi sesikhonile kwalungisa ekutheni abe sesimende lesikahle ukuthi ema public servants angasebentela ku sesiwa landzile la besiqashe khona sawafaka kulamatiko lasalungisiwe kuze sitokhona kunciphisa netimali tema rentals sithi nje umsebenzi lomhle kakhulu nawo lesiwu achievile si public service Lokunye ke umsebenzi umuntu nayo induna la asayine wona ngokubuka indzaba ye-pension fund. Siyawukhumbula ke ukuthi i-pension fund ngilapho khona tonke ti-70 tahulumende tiphosa khona imali nahulumende uyatiphosela ekutheni umuntu naseka penshelwe akhone lokuthi aphile. Sithi ke i-PSPF nayiqala lekubo 1993 sitakhumbula ukuthi ke nga 1996 i-funding level yakhona beyithi 28%, kepha lokusikhuluma kulomnyaka wa 2024 nasiuphetha beyisho ukuthi seyifike ku 86.2%. Lokusho ukuthi lesikhebesi noma ke le deficit lebeyikhona iya ngokuncipha kancane kancane. Sikhuluma nje i-assets base yayo i-PSPF seyifike ku 37 billion. Lokusho ukuthi cha ifund lekhulako. Buhle bale fund ukuthi ke iphindze i-investe khona la ekhaya ikhuphule umnotho. Yebo tikhona ke imali siphinde sithi investe kubomakhelwane nangesheya kwetilwandle ukuze sitothola ama returns la kahle. Sithi ke lesikhwama siya ngokukhula nawubuka nje takhiwo letinhle nababo Hilton nakuya lapha ngesheya kule bekuthiwa iSasco building uyasibona ukuthi ngumabukwasi lolu wakho lapha ngesheya. Sinabo oncology sibina ngeclinic leta ubuka tindzaba tabo cancer sesinabo nabo Peppertech inkampani ke leyakhiwe leta ukhicita tinto te packaging. Lokusho kona ukuthi emaswati lamanenge aqashiwe even. Lokule ngikubalile kuncane kakhulu kunengilasi investe khona locally. Lokusho ukuthi emaswati lamanengi awuthola emathuba ekusebenza nawo akhona ukuthi nakajika emakhaya kube khona la kuphethe. Lokho kusho ukuncipha kwebuphuya even. Wayethe unophakathi.
The Board of Directors, Management and Staff of Eswatini Telecommunications Corporation wishes the King Ngwenyama Emaswati, His Majesty King Mswati III, a happy 57th birthday. Halala Mbangazitha, halala wena waphakathi.
The main committee, management and staff of Tibio Tagangwane wish His Majesty King Mswati III a happy 57th birthday. Khula Mlisa, wayethe wena waphakathi.
The mayor, the councillors, the CEO, management and Babani residents wish His Majesty King Mswati III a happy 57th birthday. Lunwelelo lutse Mbangazitha. Bayithe.
The Board of Directors, Management and Staff of Montigny wish His Majesty King Mswati III a happy 57th birthday. Montigny, we add value. Bayethe wena waphakathi.
The Board of Directors, Management and Staff of Ubombo Sugar Limited wish His Majesty King Mswati III a happy 57th birthday. Lunelelo lutse Mbangazitha, bayethe wena waphakathi.
Sekusele umzuzu munye ukuthi kubumbane insimbi esiphohlongo namhla ekseni nemambala Mnguni lunelo lutse wena waphakathi kusasa onke amaswati abheke eshiselweni enhlangano.
Sikuthe sinamandla bajabule kakhulu eshiselweni. So lo bathi abalali kusasa ke sebata enjoy lokungalali kwabo ukuthi nangemambala bebangalalileni. Cha kutaba mnanzi kakhulu. Sonke sithi bayethe wena waphakathi. Kwalo mntu sibakhulu sibe naselihlelweni ube nelisuku loluhle usale kahle.